Is it morning where you are?
No, it's about supper time. It's like almost 5 o'clock, 5 p.m.
Oh, okay. I kind of woke up not too long ago, so excuse me if I'm a bit woozy.
It's early there, isn't it?
Well, it's not as early as my excuse should be. It's 9:40 a.m. So
Oh, you're so lucky. You don't have children?
I don't. Can you
No.
tell?
Yeah, because normally people with children they're up early. That's
Yes.
hilarious. I wish I could sleep till 9:45. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, sorry to just burn that in you.
Rubbing it in, rubbing it in.
Exactly. Why I get to talk to you today is The Cellar. This marks a bit of a return to horror for you. House of Wax, The Quiet. I'd even go as far back as Are You Afraid of the Dark? Was there any reason that there was a bit of a distance from you in horror, or is it just the way life worked out?
I guess a little bit of both. I think if
Mhm.
the right script comes along, I'm not opposed to it, but there is definitely a consciousness in wanting to pivot sometimes after certain genres when you're making movies, just because you just always want to avoid the label of one thing or another, whether that be oh, she only does comedy, or oh, she only does
Right.
drama, or oh, she only does horror films. I'm always interested in the pivots, and in the change. But I think if the story is great, I mean, I'm not opposed to it. If
Mhm.
that answers your question,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
hope.
it does. So is that what grabbed you with The Cellar, the actual story?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough. I got, had a great conversation with our director writer Brendan, and but I saw his short, which was called The 10 Steps,
Yep.
which I thought was really clever in its concept and idea. And then to read the feature, I thought, wow, it's not easy taking a short and making it a full length. So his incorporation of mathematics and mythology, and obviously my connection with this character, and a mother sort of searching for her daughter, it all sort of became very appealing to me. The movie is very atmospheric, and there's not a whole lot of unnecessary dialogue. So
Right.
there's a lot of scenes that sort of play out, where you're just sort of watching my character, and there's a lot of unsaid things between the husband and wife as well, that we felt like if we had the backstory in our minds, the moments and the looks will read and will make a lot more sense.
One interesting element that I found about your character, Kira, and her relationship with Ellie, it was already kind of fractured by the time that we meet them. There's a sort of disconnect between the mother and daughter that
Yep.
once the daughter disappears, serves as a kind of guilt for Kira to help, I guess, drive her forward. Did you find that element in that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that adds layers and complexity to a character
Mhm.
makes it just more interesting always, right? So, yeah, for me, I thought, wow, these are things that add that little bit of something, that texture, that yeah, makes things a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
So not only is she just, a mother in desperate need to find her daughter, there is also, like you said, that guilt that follows her, and choices that she probably wishes she could take back.
Hmm.
And being present. And I think you know, later on in the film, without giving anything away, I think it helps with the payoff. And
Mm.
so there is a lot of that. There's I think the more layers and the more complexity in the characters, the more interesting and the more sophisticated the film.
Yeah, there was a particular moment when they realize certain elements that they've missed of their own daughter's life. And it was a bit of a
Sure.
painful moment that you realize, or that they're realizing certain shortcomings that they may have had. And I thought that was a really good texture to the film.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents would relate. I
Mm.
think we're all very much striving to give our children everything that we possibly can, and give them a life that we feel like they deserve, but sometimes that comes at a cost. So if anything, it's an eye opener to go, of course we want to give them this big beautiful house, and we want to give them this beautiful life, and all they really want is our love and attention. So yeah, it definitely added a little something to it.
Your co-star, Abby Fitz, who plays your daughter Ellie, she was making her first feature film with this. Am I right?
Yes, I believe she was doing mostly television. Yeah, for
Wow,
sure.
right. So she's quite
Yeah.
good in the film. Were you able
Oh,
to
wonderful.
give any advice to her on the acting front, or she like, I'm good to go? I just think that's since,
No.
you were also a younger
Yeah.
horror star at one point.
Yeah. No, we had a lot to discuss and a lot of great conversations, and she was very much working hard at her craft and had a lot of questions, which I always find admiring about someone who's in our business. I think she certainly didn't come on to set with any sort of attitude or cockiness in any way. She was really excited to be there and gave a wonderful performance. So yeah, and there was a lot of like this sort of full circle moment for me, being her age at one point,
Right.
playing the sort of daughter in distress and in 24. So there was a lot of things we could discuss, and ways to sort of approach the character without it feeling that's a tricky role, because when you're playing a character who's at odds with another character, and in her position, sort of the bratty teen, you can get sort of pigeonholed into being not so likable.
Right.
So to find a way to create that character and still have people feel for her. So there was a lot of like, how do we approach it? How do you approach that? So she was excellent, excellent, and was all ears. So yeah, I was really impressed with her.
That's cool. So production took place in Ireland right in the middle of the pandemic, am I right?
Yes.
Did that present any kind of challenges? And were there any perhaps benefits to the restrictions of a pandemic during a shoot?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenges were more so for the producers than
Yeah,
myself. They made it very easy for us.
right.
But of course, challenges in that this was prior to any sort of vaccine, so it was a scary time. And if
Mm.
someone ended up with COVID, our whole production was going to shut down. So we were really on the edge of our seats every day, going, just fingers crossed, hoping we get the movie made. And that our bubble sort of stayed our bubble. And like I said, the producers in Ireland really um, made that a smooth ride for us, which was really great. And I think the benefits were, there were so many, in that we really were this sort of family getting this movie done, and at the time of in the world that was just so crazy and chaotic. I can't believe we did it. But also the fact that I got 2 weeks in quarantine, which normally would be quarantine, but it was really a chance to have uninterrupted time to focus on the script and
Oh,
development and sort of pacing and what I wanted to do with it. And I mean, I haven't had that kind of, you know, time since I was like a kid. I mean, or a teenager. I mean, with no kids, no family stuff, no other outside, distractions. It
mhm.
was, I don't know if I'll ever get that again.
You almost
again.
got
So
forced study time.
yes, and I took advantage of it, and I enjoyed it very much.
That's great. Something I like learning about when it comes to horror films or thrillers is how things are on set. I know that some directors or some productions like things being a little tense or moody to keep things on a certain kind of tonal wavelength. In regards to the Cellar, how was it filming that? Was it, as soon as everything went cut, everyone started laughing, or were things kind of, maintain a certain level of seriousness or even creepiness?
Yeah, there were some laughs, but I would say that in all, I think that the general tone of the film, looking back on it, was very calm, very calm. There wasn't a whole lot of, hustle and bustle and craziness. And I think that was a lot to do with Brendan's, demeanor. I think everyone follows sort of the one at the helm. So, and
Right.
that certainly was him. So, and we had a lot of work to do in a small period of time. So it really was heads down, get the work done, and that's what we did. And the set just felt, yeah, there was an ease to it. And I will note that I think the Irish crew, and the crews that they have there are, uh, you know next level. They're amazing, really amazing, and they really know what they're doing. So I commend them, because that they really made the movie happen.
So, were there any specific scenes that you remember being particularly challenging to film or perhaps emotional? I know that some of these darker films that, especially you've been a part of, certainly would have those kind of, emotional challenges. Were there
Yeah.
anything that you found a little bit of an obstacle to surpass, or was it mostly just work as usual in the acting front?
No, I think, the physicality of it,
Mm.
is, a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of physical work that goes into horror, especially when you get into the nitty-gritty of, being chased around or what have you. And it almost ends up feeling at times almost like an action movie.
Right.
So
Yeah.
for me, it's getting through those sequences, and what's really important stylistically is the jump scares, obviously,
Mm,
are really important and crucial to the success of the movie. So that actually is a lot of coordinating, and there's quite a dance to that as well. So, I mean, just the challenges of, the actor camera relationship, and making sure those scares really pay off
right.
is always what, the things that you want to make sure are dialed in correctly.
I read an interview with your co-star Owen Mackin, I think it is.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, that there was a bit of a fly infestation on set that he experienced. Did you have any
Yes.
experience to do with that?
Yes, actually, it wasn't on set. It was
Okay.
in our cottages. We all had our own cottages that we were on the property where the house was. We were staying
Okay.
on the same property, and a day before we were out of quarantine to get into actually filming. Myself, Owen, and our director, all in separate cottages, had an infestation of flies. And it was really bizarre. We're not quite sure why or how they got there. Um, but it was a really eerie way to start the film, and one of those sort of questionable moments of how did they get there and why are they there,
Yeah. Yeah.
that sort of kicked off the film. So yeah, that was quite interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting when you start looking into all these sets that have had weird things that happen on them, especially horror films. You just kind of like, that's weird.
Yeah. It's sort of the unexplainable, and
Yeah.
then you just end up with these sort of, well, maybe it was a good omen to be having sort of this weird fly thing happen on the horror film front.
Sure. I mean, as long as there weren't maggots everywhere, I think that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we ended up getting a guy to come in and help us out, so we didn't get to that point.
Like an exorcist.
Like an exorcist, but for the flies.
Yeah. Speaking of, do you believe in ghosts or the paranormal, or is there any kind of part of you that thinks that's a possibility, or you kind of stay away from that even as a thought?
I think it's fascinating. I mean, I'm definitely not opposed to it. I just watched this really great series on, I believe it was on Netflix, called Surviving Death, and
Hmm.
it's fascinating. They dive into the paranormal, and they dive into mediums and excuse me, all sorts of things under that umbrella, and it certainly was intriguing.
Hmm. Do you have a favorite horror film, or perhaps a few that you always remember as being standing out because they scared the hell out of you?
Yeah, is it called The Strangers?
Hmm.
Is that with, was that Liv
Liv
Tyler?
Tyler? Yep.
Yeah, that
Yep.
movie is outstanding, and again, similar to ours in a way that there's a very atmospheric.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moments that you're just on the edge of your seat wondering when the scare is gonna happen, and man, when it does, it gets you. So I that one is fantastic. I love that film.
I love
Um,
the factor that it's really the reasoning is just because they were home.
exactly, and
That
and
makes it
and
more
like
terrifying.
exactly, and like our film based around this home.
Hmm.
And this is a theme that comes up a lot in this genre, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that home is supposed to be the safest place. So when that gets compromised, I don't think there's anything scarier. This is where you're supposed to feel most comfortable. So
Yeah.
I like the play on that. And my favorite horror film, or my first horror film that really got me, was Fire in the Sky. I think I was about 11 or 12.
Right.
And yeah, the idea of getting abducted by aliens haunted me for many years after that.
Indeed. Thank you so much for
Thank
talking to me
you.
today, and all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that.